My neighbor told the police I bought my daughter from the black market in China, and it was the worst mistake of her life. I spent my entire life dreaming about becoming a mother, and my body just wouldn't cooperate. My husband and I tried everything, and none of it worked. After 7 years of negative tests and doctor's visits, my husband sat me down and told me he wasn't sure he wanted to be married to someone who couldn't give him a family. I was 36 and alone and convinced I would never be a mom, but I refused to let that be the end of my story. I started researching international adoption, and spent the next 2 years drowning in paperwork and agency fees that wiped out my entire savings. I flew to China and spent 3 weeks in a tiny hotel room completing the legal process before I finally held my daughter for the first time. I had fought so hard and so long, and she was finally mine. We had been home for a few days before things started getting strange. My neighbor Debbie was the first person to welcome us home. She looked at my daughter in my arms and said, "Oh my goodness, look at her, where did you get her?" And I told her I had just finalized an adoption in China. Debbie tilted her head and said, "China? Wow, that must have been so easy compared to doing it the real way." After that, I started noticing her outside whenever my daughter and I were in the yard, always watching from her porch with her phone out. One afternoon, I looked up and caught her pointing her camera directly at us. I told myself she was probably just a bored, empty nester with boundary issues. A week later, we came home from a pediatrician appointment and found 2 police officers waiting on my porch. "What's going on?" I asked. One of the officers responded, "We received a report that you may have obtained a child illegally while traveling out of the country. We need to verify that the child is safe and that you have legal custody." I looked past him and saw Debbie standing at the end of her driveway with her arms folded and a satisfied little smile on her face like she was watching a movie she had been waiting for. The officer looked at my daughter in her playpen and said, "Ma'am, I need you to explain how you came to have this child." And I said, "I adopted her. She's my daughter. I have all the paperwork." He said, "The report we received claims you purchased this child illegally while traveling in China." And before I could respond, his partner said, "I'm going to need you to put your hands behind your back while we secure the scene." I said, "What? No, please, I didn't do anything." And he said, "This is for our safety while we do our investigation." And I felt the cold metal click around my wrists. I heard the front door open and Debbie's voice behind me saying, "Officers, thank God you're taking this seriously. I've been documenting everything for weeks." I turned around and she was standing in my doorway. I have photos of her sneaking that baby into the house in the middle of the night, and I know she was only in China for 3 weeks, which isn't nearly enough time for a real adoption. The officer said, "Ma'am, you need to wait outside." And Debbie said, "That baby doesn't even look like her. It's obvious what happened here." I was standing in my own kitchen in handcuffs while a stranger picked up my daughter, and Debbie watched with her arms crossed like she was enjoying every second. I started sobbing and saying, "Please don't take her, please, she's mine. I have proof. I did everything legally." Debbie laughed and said, "Legally? You expect anyone to believe a single woman with no husband just happens to come back from China with a baby? Please." The officer told Debbie again to wait outside, and she rolled her eyes and said, "Fine, but you'll see I'm right." One officer opened the filing cabinet and pulled out the thick folder while the other one held my daughter. He flipped through the documents, then looked at his partner and said, "This is completely legitimate." He walked behind me and unlocked the cuffs, and I felt the metal fall away from my wrists. He handed my daughter back to me, and I held her so tight she started fussing. The officer looked out the window at Debbie pacing in the driveway and said, "Wait here." I watched him approach her and say, "This woman has 2 years of legal documentation, and you filed a false report with 0 evidence." Debbie threw her hands up and said, "Are you kidding me right now? You really believe her over me?" The officer said, "The paperwork is verified, the adoption is legal, and you wasted our time." Debbie pointed at my house and said, "That woman is a liar, and that baby belongs with her real family, not some desperate woman who couldn't have her own kids." The officer stared at her and said, "Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us to the station because filing a false report is a felony." They put Debbie in the back of the squad car, and I watched from my window as they pulled out of the neighborhood. She got charged with filing a false report, and her court date is next month. I don't plan on attending because I have better things to do, like raising my daughter.